Hello, and thank you for listening to the History of World War II podcast. Episode, who in the hell knows? Anyway, with me today is Ryan Fairfield and Tony Lupo, host. My voice is actually echoing inside this big, giant helmet. Anyway,
That's your head.
that
Oh, it starts.
it's
You
already
just did it.
started. It's already started. Okay, this is real. Okay, these gentlemen, and that was air quotes, interview veterans for the Warrior Next Door podcast, which promotes veteran causes and care. Gentlemen, obviously, thank you very much for what you do. These two gentlemen have been on the show for the last two Novembers. They'll probably be with me this coming November, so that makes this June my second least favorite month. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today.
We're happy to be here. And for those who may have heard some of our commentary on previous Novembers in your show, we've never been formally invited on your show. We've kind of invited ourselves and kind of crashed your party.
Pushy.
This thing that we're doing now is the first time you've actually invited us to do something. I don't know. Are we starting to kind of find some common ground here, or what's going on?
No, absolutely not. See, what it is my therapist tells me, Ray, you got to try a couple of things you just know you're going to regret. That's how you build memories and depth and complexies. And so
what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?
I don't know. One of us might be dead before this. No, that I didn't mean that. So, I need to let everybody know. Okay, this is actually hot and heavy. I need to let everybody know that there is a video version of this on YouTube. So you can go to the History of World War II podcast on YouTube, and you can find us having fun. Yeah, that's I think it's better. Yeah, anyways.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Anything that covers more of my head, I think we can all agree is probably a good thing. So the reason I want you to watch the video is because before this is over with, you're actually going to be able to see Tony and Ryan's tears as I rip them to shreds. So what we're doing today, you're probably asking, why are these gentlemen here? We are going to discuss the top 5 World War II movies. What to look for. We're going to give our opinions. I'm sure we're going to be vilified. Send all your emails to Tony. I think that would be great. Maybe to, I think I'd set up the email, I wish I had Ray's life at gmail.com. So just go there, send all your comments, that kind of stuff. No, but seriously, thank you guys for what you do. How long has your podcast been going on?
We have been on the air. I think our first one was in September of 21. Is that right, Tony?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, and I think we're approaching. Well, for us, this is a big deal. For you, Ray, this is a weekly occurrence. We're approaching about the 200,000 download mark, which is a big deal for us.
That is a big deal. Good for you.
And about half of those are because of your show.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not wrong. No, I meant to say thank you. Fake humility.
No, we've been having a blast. So yeah,
good.
Tony.
It is, and quite frankly, in the first 6 to 8 months that we started the podcast, it was just like our moms telling us, "Oh, honey, this is so cute that you're doing this. This is great. I forwarded this to your sister, and her sister's friend says, they don't really care much about history, but it's glad that you guys are doing this." And then we go on your show. And all of a sudden we have like a proper audience, and there's people from all around the world like sending us stuff saying, "Hey, I heard about you on Ray Harris show." So again, I am very pleased that we crashed your party against your will, against your better judgment. We're happy that your wife decided to have us back when you didn't want to. So it's great. We're nothing.
It almost
I'm not sure whether that's good judgment on her. I mean, the fact that your wife wanted to have us back, she married you. So I don't know if her judgment's actually,
come see, come saw, good days, bad days.
Yeah.
Tony, can we talk about your style of headwear? Is this a family heirloom? What are we talking?
He got it in the Munich Putsch.
This is my pickle haba, and I think this is what the Germans did when they wore these things. Yeah, but it's a reproduction of the real deal, because the real deals are rare and they're very expensive. I got this from a fellow World War II, World War I history buff who we went to an Oktoberfest in Tulsa. His name is John Jeffries. He's married to someone that Ryan and I used to work with. And he gave this to me as a gift. He's like, let's go
Nice.
rock freaking Oktoberfest like a couple of bosses. And we put this on and we had our beer and we had like an entourage. Where did you get that? Where did you get that?
Right.
So now I only break this out for special occasions. That's typically drinking beer during Oktoberfest and this show. I figured, hey, we talking about, this is World War II history. This is World War I. I know I don't have a World War II hat, but to me, this feels like, you know, this works, I think.
No, it's a good look. It's a good look. It's a good look. As long as you don't, bend over and stab anybody, I think we're going to be fine. So, Ryan, go ahead.
I was just going to say that Tony didn't tell you that at that Oktoberfest, he got kicked out for whipping out his baton and starting to beat people in the crowd.
Okay, I hope that's not a metaphor.
He took it a little bit too seriously.
He really got into character. Okay.
Just the undesirables. You know, I was going after people that I thought were worthless and gypsies. It's like, you know, you don't have camps to send you to, so I'm just going to club the shit out of you like a baby seal.
Oh my God. Okay, so we're done with Tony. I'd like to thank Tony for being on the show. Ryan, tell us about your hat. It looks like you could, and no disrespect, it's intended. It looks like you could turn it upside down and it would float. It's really cool. I like that.
All right. So this is an authentic, this is a VFW hat, but it was from my wife's grandfather. He was in Illinois. Obviously it says Illinois on the side of the hat here.
Right.
But he was in the 44th Combat Engineers in World War II. Defended. Wow. He came onto the continent in at Utah Beach a month after D-Day, fought all the way to Wiltz, Luxembourg, and was captured when the German Bulge came through Luxembourg.
Right.
In about December 19th, December 20th of 44. So we inherited all of his uniform stuff and a lot of his letters and everything. And his head is a lot smaller than mine. I've had, obviously 54 years of drinking milk with lots of hormones in it. Probably HGH and who knows what else that's probably experimental on all of this. And my head is really huge.
Yeah. Well, I'm very happy for you.
So now we know that Ryan has a big head. That's great.
My skull is really thick. My brain is like a Homer Simpson deal. I've got a walnut for a brain, but I've got a 4-inch thick skull.
Well, the good news is if you ever did have to go to war, and hopefully there's never another war, I don't think you would need a helmet. I think you'd be just fine the way you are. You just bullets bounce off. Joke's on you. Anyway. So no, that's cool. That is my grandfather on my mother's side. He had, he had so many kids. The Army said, you know what, you got your own war going on. You stay here. You deal with that. He worked in the naval shipyard in Charleston, South Carolina, but he had like 8 kids or whatever. So no, you stay here. But he did play on the radio. He played the guitar on the radio for the troops. So that's as close as he got to combat, besides making the 18 children. So, whatever. But
holy crap. Is that really what happened?
Yes. Yeah. He got some kind of deferment because his wife didn't work. He had all the kids. He was in the shipyard. Obviously, they needed the shipyards, going at 150%, especially after Pearl Harbor. So he got. I don't know if it was an official deferment or just whatever, but he got to stay home, and who knows.
Keep the family going, right?
I guess so.
Keep the home fires burning.
Yeah, exactly. Someone's got to. Yeah, and the reason when I found your podcast, and one of the reasons I enjoyed it, besides what Tony doesn't bring to it, is you do cover when people talk about kind of what, the training at home and what they were doing when the war broke out. And so I haven't really covered that side of the war yet. So that was one of the things I enjoyed about your podcast. Here's the soldiers that we all admire, but this is them before they're soldiers. They go through this intense training and then they go on to be, heroes, and they do all these amazing things.
Yeah, we get some comments on that. Positive comments, right? We get negative comments at times too. But some of the positive comments talk about how they appreciate us trying to bring and put into context like the zeitgeist, what was going on at the time, what sort of things were these men and women experiencing before the war started, and they either elected to join it or were forced to. Right. And when Ryan and I first started pulling clips from these, we thought, do we skip that part of it? Do we focus more on, hey, this person was in this unit and here he is talking about his combat experiences? And there's a lot of those sort of podcasts are already out there, but we felt like, bringing home what these men and women are experiencing. They went through the crucible of the Great Depression. A lot of these individuals worked hard as rural. They were on farms. Sometimes many of the people we talk to, the best fed they ever were in their life and best clothes is when they were drafted in the Army.
Yeah. Three meals a day. Never seen it before. Yeah, that kind of stuff. And we got paid. Yeah, I've run across that a lot, and it puts things in perspective. It's like, like you were saying, for some people, and this is going to sound horrible, I know, but for some people, up until the point where they got into the fighting, the war was the best thing that had happened to them, because they got clothes that fit, they didn't get hand-me-downs, they had food, somebody was taking care of them, hygiene. All that stuff. So it changed a lot of lives in that sense. But I just enjoy that you covered the before.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I was going to say also, one of the things that we enjoy or like conveying to people from each of these veteran stories is with the training, how long the training actually takes and how amazing. Like some of these guys that are pilots, they may train for a couple of years almost, or a year and a half. Now, obviously, later in the war, they started having to throw them in a lot quicker and everything. But that's something that gets glossed over a lot of times. People think, oh, they just signed up and went straight over there. No, that's not it. They were trained. And when these guys get shot down or one of these guys is lost, that represents a major loss of experience.
Yeah, hundreds of hours, all the money. And we're not trying to be crude, but the difference between a civilian like Tony and a professional like myself is practice, is training, it's conditioning. One day he'll probably be really good at what he does. But but you have to invest in them. Like the gentleman that I just interviewed about his father being a pilot. He's British. He had to literally come over here, I think it was to Oklahoma, and train over here because they were too busy being bombed over there. So but it's like anything else, right? It's the investment. The more you put into someone, you treat them right, the more you'll get out of them. And it benefits, the entire team. Before we go on, I just realized something. I'm sorry if I cut anybody off. This is the first video I've done, and I have been told over the years, and I kind of use this to my advantage, I have the worst case of resting bitch face. So when one of you are talking and I look like I couldn't give two shits, it's probably not the case unless Tony's talking.
Unless I'm talking, exactly.
No, so don't read anything into this. I just don't care. No, I'm the typical guy. When someone else is talking, I'm just in neutral and I'm listening. I'm not, so don't react to that.
So you're saying that Tony and I are the eye candy here. Is that what you're saying?
Oh my God.
That's how low you have fallen.
That's exactly what you're saying, Tony.
That's how low you have fallen.
Okay. What I wanted to do was do the show live. And as the numbers don't drop, we were just going to start taking off clothes and try to, anyway, that's for next time. Next time. Don't worry about that. Okay. So before we jump into this, the top five, the definitive top five World War II movies. We're not going to get any trouble for that. I guess the first question is, what makes a good World War II movie? What do you want to see? What boxes have to be checked for it before, by the time it's all over with, you can go, okay, I didn't mind investing that time. I got something out of it. Who would like to go first?
I'll jump in. For me, I'm no Siskel or Ebert, that's right. For all the old school people out there, but
yes,
I like a movie that has some element of it filmed on location. If it's going to be a historical movie, I love seeing the reenactment happening where the actual battle took place or something to that regard. I love an accurate retelling rather than an embellishment of the story. I think these events that happened in World War II don't need embellishment.
Exactly.
And I find it off-putting whenever that they decide that they need to make it more exciting than it actually was.
Right.
I don't care for a movie. I think a movie that's not too preachy is something that I don't like it when a director tries to make a political statement or is trying to slant things to their perspective. I want it. I will just give me the unvarnished history, and I'll make my own decisions on that. So, if it's a fictionalized movie, in other words, it's just a historical fiction, as long as it has great acting and a great story, I mean, and good special effects, you know, it's not too cheesy. I mean, I think that makes a great movie.
Right. That's an excellent list. I don't even think we
Yeah.
need to ask Tony. Let's move on.
No.
No. Boom. Sorry. So I enjoyed that a little too much. Sorry, Tony, would you please like to weigh in and tell me, you know, from what you've seen, is this big? Is this average? Anyway, no, just go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
That looks slightly larger than average, but you go ahead and put it in your mouth, and I'll go ahead and share with you some of my comments on this while you're doing that.
Fifth grade humor already.
Burn!
Oh yeah. We're gonna start doing poop jokes pretty soon.
Deal. But please, Tony, weigh in.
A lot of mine, you know, mirror Ryan's. I mean, I like it to be factually correct. Again, there's no need to sensationalize history. On its own, it's amazing. And I get tired of it. Just feels like you know, every sort of story they have to add some sort of romance or some sort of love story BS in it. And that annoys the crap out of me. I like seeing things like proper uniforms, props, locations, like Ryan was saying. In pre-CGI era, I can see where, you know, they would have had to use American tanks for Panzers and all that stuff. But, you know, after circa, I don't know, 1995, there's ample ability to try to capture that right. I've seen war movies where they have Americans shooting like Lee Enfield rifles that the British use. And those are like major faux pas to me.
Yeah.
The other thing I like is to show both perspectives. I love movies where it's not just about, you know, some sort of propaganda fluff piece on the American military, but they show what the Germans or the Japanese, what their perception of the war was, of the Americans, of the GIs. I really like getting both sides of the story. And I think the last one that I have is to address the zeitgeist of the time. To a modern audience can't possibly know, unless they're really interested in trying to learn what it was like in 1939 when war broke out. What was going on then? And I love movies that try to take you back to that time period, that try to make you understand the conditions for why there's this war movie anyway. So those are the things that I really like about a war movie.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm pretty much going to piggyback off you two gentlemen. A certain level of accuracy, excuse me, I apologize, although smoking those cigars, is something but even, and Tony, you touched on this. Well, first of all, Ryan, you know, you're talking about accuracy. And then Tony said something about fiction. I think it was Tony. You can still convey the horrors of war in a fiction story, but sometimes you already know war is bad. It's war. You want, you know, tell me what happened, and so you want that accuracy. If there's elements of self-sacrifice, resilience, bravery, because that's normally how one side wins over the other. And touching on something else Tony said, they've got to be able to cover the complexities of war, diverse perspectives, because everybody's the hero in their own story. You know, the Nazis thought they were doing the right thing. The Japanese thought they were, you know, everybody's, you know, their own hero, whatever. And of course, something like awesome cinematography, you can't cut corners on that. Great performances, one that you won't soon forget, something that stirs emotions in you, something that makes you flinch when the person on the screen flinches. And finally, for me, it's a movie that puts you through the ringer. And so by the time the movie's done, you hope that there's never another war again, because the very nature of war, excuse me, the very nature of war is destruction. So if they can take you along for a ride with them, you've pretty much covered what I'm looking for. And again, accuracy, just show me what it was like to have been. I don't want to be there. Just show me what it was like to have been there. Yeah, that kind of
for sure.
And so can we cover a few things that we don't like about war movies?
Sure.
Well, kicking that off.
You come across as pretty negative, Tony. So I'm not surprised you brought that up.
It's that helmet. It's that helmet.
It's a little too tight.
Yeah, it's a little.
Don't ever sit on that helmet by accident, please, Tony. Start it off.
They're watching.
Now, I have a feeling that if someone gave us a ton of money and we made a war film, we'd probably screw it up, because there's a science to good storytelling or whatever. But what makes this sounds weird. What makes a bad war film?
I mean, for me, I get tired of the romance and love stories that they seem to have to place in every freaking historical movie. I understand that there's a home front, and that I like it when they cover the home front, But, you know, these random, highly improbable, ridiculous whirlwind romances in the middle of a war movie, to me, is just superfluous.
Yeah.
The men are often too old. I mean,
yes, brilliant.
I hate that.
Yes.
They always have these like old actors that are in their 30s and 40s that are privates and stuff, and that's just BS. I mean, these people would have been really young, 19 years old, right? And I like seeing movies where they try to do that. The uniforms and the equipment are too clean.
Yeah,
I mean,
always.
That's why I like the movie. Yeah. They come in, they got everything's polished and stuff. It's like they're on some sort of drill. I mean, the movie Fury did a really good job of showing how grimy and nasty your soldiers would have been after spending 30 days straight in the field, right? And the other thing that I don't like is, especially with American films, and mostly in the 50s or 60s and 70s, where they portrayed the GI as this kind of cocky, full of bravado, always back talking his officers, you know, kind of this rebel without a cause sort of person. I mean, the American soldiers were more individualistic than, say, the Japanese or the Germans, but they were still professionals.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't a bunch of hippies riding around in tanks. Yeah. And I kind of get tired of seeing that. And then lastly, and Ryan touched on this with the things that he like to see, is the agenda. You know, I just tell the story. There's going to be agendas baked into it.
Right.
And I can't stand it when you watch something like, I don't know, like Kelly's Heroes. You know, I know that was supposed to be a comedy, but basically what they did is and I mentioned this earlier, they turned every GI into a 60s era hippie, which is when that was recorded. Right. And I was like, you know what? That's just, that's not Apocalypse Now. The Vietnam era really suffered from that more than the World War II era, but it still annoys me when I see that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can I, before you jump in, Tony, I'm a little disappointed because the other night I had a dream about you and I in a foxhole. I guess that's not going to happen anytime soon. I will learn to live with that. But the one thing I thought you were going to say is, like, when you were talking about how the Americans are portrayed. I mean, I practiced walking into a room like John Wayne, you know, for a whole week. You know, hey, so I guess we're not going to. I'll save that for another video. Don't worry. But I'm sorry, Ryan. It's your turn.
No worries. No worries. Hey, so I guess for me, an over-reliance on CGI. Too much. I know it's really gotten good. The CGI effects have gotten really fantastic, you know, in the recent years, but I can't stand it when there's just an over reliance on it. I'd rather you do without it and have me envision it in my own mind rather than faking it and everything. The Hollywood embellishment drives me nuts when they take, like in the recent movie Midway, where the pilot that was that Ensign Gay, or the pilot that always went down on the deck and came up onto came down the water up onto the aircraft carrier and landed. And you wonder at the very end, oh, did he crash? No, he pops back up and he lands on the deck. I'm like, that is enough. You know, no more of that. I hate that stuff.
Yeah. The emotional payoff.
The superfluous love story. I'm right there with you, Tony. It's for the ladies, though. It's so the guys can get their girlfriends and their wives to go see the movie.
Exactly.
You know, everybody wants to see Kate Beckinsale kiss Ben Affleck.
I do. Oh, sorry. We're going to cut that part out. Sorry.
So, what would be an example for you guys? Well, actually, Ray, why don't you tell us about you, and then let's talk about what would be a prime example of a bad movie. Basically.
Okay. I agree with a lot of what you said. I get that they bring an interest to bring in, to get as many audience members, and, women are fortunately or unfortunately the half of the population. So you got to bring them in, that kind of stuff. But the only thing I would, and I'm not really pushing back, I totally agree with you. But the only thing is, there were a lot of people who really didn't know each other, who would get married real quick before he took off. That's not really romance, but I think when they do romance in the film, that's them trying to convey. But you and I assume you gentlemen are married, not to each other. And, marriage is complicated. Marriage is hard. You got to get to know each other, all that kind of stuff. And just, I love you. Okay, honey, I got to go. That was real, but the romance is a little forced, or it's a lot forced, I guess I should say.
And that's the thing. If it's a home front thing, it's cool. But when it's forced, when they just kind of jam it in there, it's kind of like, you jammed it in there. Pardon my pun.
Exactly. It's like all the way. So before I give you mine, and I'm glad one of the many reasons I asked you gentlemen to, or you asked yourselves, I can't remember. It's all blur right now, to come on the show is because roughly same age. Do you remember that scene in Jaws where the cantankerous ship captain Quint, played by the incredible Robert Shaw, describes what happens to the crew of the USS Indianapolis after its torpedoes, and it's just this, they just zoom in on him, and he's slow and he's drawing it out, and it just gives you chills by the time he's done. So when I saw the we'll get into this in a moment. When I saw a movie based on that, I'm like, yes. Whatever. So there's, and I think you both touched on this, just to the best of your ability in a limited scope. I get it. We all don't have $1 billion. Just show me what happened. You don't have to do all, because it's about the men protecting each other, fighting each other, suffering when their best friend or someone who becomes their best friend dies. Just stick to the basics, because that's why I'm here in the first place.
I think that, I think that there's been a trend more towards that in recent years. The movie Dunkirk, for instance, is a movie that stuck to the actual timeline and everything. And it was a retelling of how things actually happened. It was a very accurately done movie. There's another movie I had a senior moment there. I can't believe that. But
there'll be several on this show.
Age, so
there'll be several.
Oh, Greyhound.
Exactly.
Greyhound. Yes.
That's another movie where it's just all about what happened, and it's a whirlwind, and it's there aren't a lot of parallel storylines going on. It's pretty much Tom Hanks trying to get across the ocean,
Yeah.
So
I love that. What it is it's a perspective of not only the captain, but his immediate crew who's in the bridge, where this is how they dealt with this ongoing situation. They kept it simple. Did they save a lot of money by kind of focusing? But who cares? That's from their perspective. That's how the war was. And so I wanted to see it from a bridge's perspective. And I thought they did a really good job.
Yeah.
So who would like to go first with their thumbs down?
Why don't you go first? Why don't you go first, Ray? Because I went first, and then Tony. That's your turn now. We're going to be nice to you. Okay. We're in charge.
We'll let you do this on your own show.
We're in charge. Yeah.
When someone's nice to me, I get suspicious. So I'm gonna allow it this time. But anyway, no. So as I was mentioning, the USS Annapolis. So there was a movie, the USS Indianapolis, Men of Courage. I was pumped. And then I watched it, and I was deflated. I went from pumped to deflated. So I had such high hopes, but it was like, and you've kind of seen this in other films. Sometimes it's like they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what tone they're going with. They don't know what kind of movie they want to be. And they could have easily have called this movie Jaws 5 because, yes, the men, when they were torpedoed, they went into the water and there were sharks and it was horrible. But they kind of took something that we could all pretty much figure out for ourselves, and they kind of drew it out or whatever. And there were times when it was silly, not the sharks, but before that. And I just thought it was like almost touching disrespectful, considering what these men went through. And so for me, and it has Nicolas Cage in it. I love Nicolas Cage, but I feel like he can't say no when a script is put in his hand, and someone's got to teach that man the word no. Amen. Occasionally. And so I was disappointed.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Go ahead, Tony.
I mean, for me, it was the 2001 version of the movie Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, but you stole mine.
Is that yours too?
Yes,
there's plenty of bad ones, dude.
Good bad example.
Maybe we've got different reasons for why it sucked, but I mean, when it came out in 2001, it was after. What's that? It's after Saving. Exactly. It was after Saving Ryan. It was a big deal. People were talking about the CGI, and that may be why Ryan has soured on it because of that movie. And you had the trailers that were amazing. I was so freaking excited to see the World War II and the Pacific version of Saving Private freaking Ryan. And then it turned into a World War II version of the movie Frozen by Walt Disney. And why do I say that? Because
not in a good way.
Not in a good way at all. The only Oscar it won was from Diane Warren on the best music and original song called There You'll Be. And when you think of Frozen, you think of the songs. And I'm afraid the only thing they got right in that whole freaking movie was that Pearl Harbor was attacked on December 7th, 1941 by the Japanese. Everything else was wrong.
Yeah.
And it was love story. It wasn't just a love story. It was like a love triangle. It's the worst type of love stories.
Right.
Or the best. Nope. Sorry, I didn't say that.
Dude, the best.
Sorry.
I remember people, when I went to see it, people walked out about halfway through.
Wow.
And I wanted to, but I paid some money and I wanted to see Pearl Harbor.
No,
I am cheap. I was like, hey, I'm going to run this thing through. So for me, that's the worst one because, and that's why to this day, I don't want Disney to touch anything that has anything to do with any sort of serious content, especially about World War II or veterans, because they will F it the freaking up. So that's mine.
Yeah, exactly. So I have to second, as I said, Pearl Harbor, 24% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's the approval from everyone who's watched that movie. Okay.
Right.
It had everything: over-reliance on CGI, Hollywood embellishment, the superfluous love story. This was a love triangle, which is a little curveball there.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as other, I guess I have to resort to like my backup list or my honorable mentions then. I mean, Red Tails would be another one. So I mean, and also the movie Battle of the Bulge is widely panned as one of the worst World War II movies because it's all over the place. It's really not that accurate in storytelling, and it leaves off like kind of, leaves the viewer kind of hanging.
Yeah.
You don't really know what happened,
Yeah.
Red Tails was disappointing. Ryan and I we were very fortunate to have gotten to meet several members of the Tuskegee Airmen, the Red Tails, the black fighter pilots that had to overcome racism and adversity to do amazing things.
Yeah.
And when they had that movie and they basically yucked it up and turned him into a bunch of John Waynes, as opposed to just honoring their legacy by telling the truth about what Lee Archer and all those men did. Yeah. I remember watching the trailer and seeing some of the things that they were putting out there. It's like, I don't even know if I can watch this. It's really kind of a travesty because they have a proud history of coming into the war when no one wanted them or thought they could fight. And then you ruin it by doing that. That kind of pissed me off.
Yeah.
Do you, and this, I'm just your opinion, so I'm pretty sure we can't be sued for this. Sometimes I get the feeling that when they cover something like how blacks were treated in the war or whenever, sometimes it's like they're almost afraid to remind us of, us, but America, of not our best moments. And so sometimes they kind of, gloss over it or ease up on it when it was pretty freaking brutal they had to fight to have the chance to fight, sometimes I don't know if they're just trying to be sensitive, but I totally agree with what you said, and it's a shame that they had this opportunity to tell this incredible story, and they muffed it.
They did, and Battle of the Bulge, another one. And you're right about the whole, to me, the agenda part that we talked about, what makes a bad war movie is the agenda. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the agenda can be too much jingoistic, pro-American, John Wayne propaganda. Right. I love movies where they show, hey, we weren't ready for the war. Our men, our soldiers were kind of unprofessional when it started. Fury. Our equipment wasn't really where it needed to be. It's okay to talk about that.
Be honest. I'm here for the authenticity, and if you're not going to do that, tell me ahead of time, and I'll take my $7 or actually it's now $20 and go somewhere else and do something else. Can I say just real quick, right before I walked in here to start talking to you guys, my wife and two daughters, and we're talking a 16-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old daughter, they started listing World War II movies. I'm like, how did I forget that? Oh my God. So they did a better job than so when we get to this, I'm sure, again, but send all your emails to Tony, but there are so many, and so many are memorable and so many aren't memorable. Yeah. Not because they weren't good, but just, they're just the tonnage of movies that are out there. So, yeah. So let me start with this before we jump into the top 5. So, and again, roughly the same age, my peers here, as far as rings on the tree. I found that by the time I had a list of 30 movies, and by the time I whittled it down, I'm like, I'm an old fuck. That stuff. Yeah. So, but when you're a kid, when you're 17 or even maybe 21, and you watch a movie and it grips you for whatever reason, it's a war movie, it grips you for whatever reason, it gets burned into your soul. And maybe kind of defined that, oh, that makes it good. Well, not necessarily, but it was good to me, or it was good for me. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
I tried to not be emotional, but I think I screwed that up. But I'm sure you gentlemen will have no trouble telling me your opinions once I give you my films, but we're gonna jump into that.
Tony has no emotions.
No. So we're gonna be good. We're gonna be
I'm a sociopath. I'm
not
soulless and dead. Yeah. I mean, that's why I threw Ryan under the bus several times earlier on when we were, working on the podcast
you brought that
together. Up. Well, yeah. I mean, so for people wonder why everyone's picking on me, it's because I disrespected Ray when we were on our first, we were on a show for the first time, and Ray just went, and Ray thought it was Ryan the second year.
Yeah.
And I didn't correct him.
No, that's correct.
All right.
Yeah. And I was like, what the heck? Just
wait a minute. That wasn't me. That was this guy.
Tony's like, excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. God. Yeah. So we don't have to worry about hurting Ryan's feelings. I mean, Tony's feelings, because he doesn't have any.
That's right.
I think really good. So let me ask, when you guys were looking at the films, I don't know if this is cheating because it's not like there's a grade or anything, but I looked up, top 10 films, top 5 films to start building my list. Did you guys do that, or did you just kind of start writing stuff down, or what was your approach?
I've been thinking about this. I mean, I've had people ask me before, what are your favorite World War II movies? So I've kind of known in my head for a while,
right,
what, and I think Tony and I have even talked about this in the past, what we think are, the best movies and stuff. And so, so, I mean, for me, it started from there. And then of course I had to go out and see, am I forgetting anything? I mean, there's so many movies out there that you're like, oh my gosh, I never forget myself if I didn't include, Schindler's List or something like that, I mean, so there's just all sorts of that going on. So it's not an easy task really at all to whittle this down to 5.
Yes. Whose idea? Who's freaking? Oh, never mind. Go ahead. Sorry.
So I mean, I did the same thing as Ryan. I just thought about the ones that stuck out, and I ended up with 4 right away. And then the 5th one, I went online and started poking around. I'm like, oh shit, that was pretty good. And that was pretty good. And I have one on here, Ray, that's exactly like the one you described, where it probably doesn't check all the boxes that we outlined for what makes a good World War II movie, but it's like every time it's on, it reminds me of being a kid watching this movie with my dad, and I get sucked into it. It can be, it's like it's on TV. It's like, well, that's it. I'm just going to sit here for the next 2.5 hours, and half of which is commercials, to watch this freaking movie. So I've got a little bit of that kind of nostalgia part in the list as well. Yeah.
That's exactly how I feel about Frozen. So I'm glad you brought that up. So fine, I'll sing. No, okay. So we're obviously going to go in reverse order. I'm sure there's another word for it. Reverse order.
I think it'd be cool to have, if this was your idea, I think you should get the encore. I think you should go last.
So my wife says. Anyway, no. So okay, so the number 5. Obviously, we're gonna count down from 5 to 1. Who would like to go first with their?
Go for it, Tony.
Kill me. You're the first number 5. You're number 5.
I'll do it. So I'll start with number 5, and number 5 is my one movie that I can't stop watching anytime it's on. Right. That checks some of the boxes, but not all of them, that I just have loved since I was a little kid. Mm-hmm. And that movie is Patton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I figured that was what it was.
Solid.
I love Patton. Solid.
George C. freaking Marshall. Sorry.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
George C. Scott.
George C. Scott.
What did I think? George Marshall. Oh, I just did an interview about.
He was actual World War II general. Right. Yeah. Sorry.
He was George C. He was Patton's boss. So
yes.
Yeah.
I can be forgiven. Sorry.
Patton
Did you ever get your VCR set, Ray? By the way, did you?
I like the time flashes for the last 20 years. Don't give me shit. Anyway, I apologize. I apologize for Ryan, everybody. Tony, please.
Sorry, go ahead.
Fine, I'm getting a little love. Ryan, keep doing that.
Okay, yeah.
So Patton was made in 1970. It starred George C. Scott, and it won, I think, 7 Academy Awards. I mean, it won awards for things that had not been done before cinematically in terms of special effects and props. And to me, it's a perfect example of they really tried to go to the places or emulate the places that they fought in They tried to use as much of the material as would have been available back in 1970. It was in color.
Yes.
It was one of the earlier movies that was in color. George C. Scott played an amazing Patton. Obviously, he won the Oscar for best leading actor.
Mm-hmm.
It showed the soldiers kind of griping a little bit and being dirty and being pushed to the limits. And I also remember, so I was born in 1970. I remember watching it on some show when I was probably 8 years old with my dad. It's probably one of the earliest war movies I remember watching with my dad. And watching a war movie with my dad is so much fun because he gets all pumped up and he starts yelling at the screen and he keeps looking at me and saying, "You need to know that this is happening right now. And you need to know that that's what we were doing." And I'm like, "Okay, Dad, he's a badass. I get it." So that is my number 5.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ryan, please.
My number 5 is historical fiction. I call it historical fantasy, but it's Inglourious Bastards.
Okay.
The Tarantino movie. You know, I first watched that, I was like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
It's complete fantasy, but I call it alternative history, you know,
That's
and
the way it should have been.
Because it is, okay, it's all about, you know, a special, it's actually based upon, there's a real Inglourious Bastards, and it's called Operation Greenup, where they sent Jewish soldiers. They were commandos that went into Europe and everything, and they were to take out Nazi officers and that sort of thing, and strike fear in the heart of the Germans.
Right.
But you know, the acting to me in that movie is great. The guy who plays Hans Landa, the SS colonel.
Oh,
I mean, that opening scene
Yes.
where he goes to the house up in the mountains
I was terrified.
is amazing. The scene where he's in the Paris cafe with the girl who escaped from the house in the mountains, and the tension and the stress, and you're like, does he know that's her? I can't tell if he knows that's her. He probably does, but apparently he didn't, because he didn't do anything about it, you know. Anyway, and the scene where they're in the cellar of the bar, and there's the German garrison that comes in there, and you know, there's the American commandos that are trying to be Germans, and they get that whole movie. I love Brad Pitt's character in that movie. It's laugh out loud. He's a modern John Wayne in that movie for sure.
The Nazis got to go after the Nazis.
Yeah. So
don't rain.
That's right. I love that movie. First, I really, you know, I didn't really love it, but then as I watch it more and more, I'm like, I can really appreciate this. The storyline is just, it keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time.
Yeah. I love the fact that it was a roller coaster ride from the beginning to the end. Like you said, tense as hell, but by the end you're like, yeah, okay.
Right.
I could see that. Yeah, no, it was fun. It was a lot of
What
fun.
I liked about it is a lot of these alternative history movies, everything gets kind of twisted up, and then at the end they'll snap it back so that what really happened in our universe actually happens. Like the movie The Final Countdown, where the aircraft carrier goes through the wormhole and it goes into Japan right before World War II, right?
Yeah.
They instead of screwing up the whole timeline, they found a way to get back in the wormhole before anything got screwed up. What I like about Inglourious Bastards, they just screwed it up. They were like, screw it. This is a new ending for World War II. We're going to kill this guy, and this is going to happen, and Hitler gets burned up, and
kill the entire Nazi high command. And this one guy is the guy that's a traitor to Nazi Germany, and he does it all so he can live in the U.S. afterward and have his own house and live in the Northeast. Like on Nantucket or something like that.
I thought that was ballsy.
Which is not, I mean, not that particular person, but which is not, it's true, you know, Operation Paperclip. We went in, we grabbed a bunch of scientists, brought them, you know, gave them pretty good lives and, you know, washed their past or whatever. So yeah, again, a lot of it is based off true events, but that doesn't mean you can't, you know, twist it a little bit. And as long as you're conveying the horror that is war, you know, you're doing what you're supposed to do. It's a war movie, that kind of thing. So, yeah. So, wow. Okay. Mine, I'm going to start out kind of serious. Maybe I should just leave and you two finish the show by yourself. But so I picked the 1981 Das Boot film.
Good one. Yeah. That was on my honorable mentions list.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I can't wait to get to that. That's a whole nother fight, but we'll say that for later. But it's based off a book that the guy was actually in in a sub during World War II. The book is a little more anti-war, but in this movie, you get to see, but they do it well. You get to see the tedious moments of life in a sub, because it's like anything else. It's hurry up and wait. 95% of the time you spend running around or whatever, and then 5% of the time it's do or die. So that kind of extremism, if you will. But you get to see how a sub operates. You get to see the clash, and I know this really happened. You got the younger crew members who are they're pro-Nazi because they've been brainwashed, since little kids. Then you got the older guys who were in the German Navy before Hitler came along. They just want to fight for their country, do what's honorable, and if it's at all possible, not die, because war is war. So they just want to go through it. But let's see here. We've heard that. I've done enough interviews where I've heard pilots say this, I've heard tank crews say this, and I'm sure you guys have too. I've heard people in ships and subs. They don't think about, I want to kill that guy. I want to get that son of a bitch, whatever. Yeah. I need to take out that tank. I need to take out that plane, that bomber. So they focus on the machine of war, because no one wants to think I just killed 7 guys. And so and that's what this movie did. It's like, I just need to remove this obstacle. There just happens to be people operating it. It wasn't personal, that kind of thing. But the part that really got me was they torpedoed this tanker, British tanker. It's on fire. They had to go do something. They come back and it's on fire, but it's still floating. Well, let's just finish it off. But what they didn't know when they sent the second torpedo was there were people still on the tanker, and they were like, oh my God, so they realized they were actually, or they knew this, but they were taking out human lives when that was not their intention this go around. Just the complexities of war, and war is nothing more than the highest highs and the lowest lows. And by the time the war is done and the movie's done, everybody's wrung out, because that's what war does to you. So I just had to give that one a mention, because it ticked a lot of boxes.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when I watched it, what I loved about it, everyone was wet, greasy, grimy, filthy. And I didn't know when I watched the movie at the time, but I've later learned that the single unit, the single force in World War II in the European theater that saw the most casualties per capita was the German submarine, the U-boat fleet. Yeah. So they're under immense pressure, and they had to know that their chances of survival was low. You got to tack that onto it, kind of this feeling of despair. Yeah. I thought it was a great movie. I have not watched that in years. I may have to.
It's been a while
Netflix
for me too.
That.
Yeah. Well, we'll have a watch party.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll bring the popcorn. No,
so we could do like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 with World War II movies, and put all of our little heads with our little caps on.
Yeah, with the little pickle haba and all of our ill-fitting hats, like sitting as shadows on the screen.
Oh, and then just my big head, that'll block half the screen. So.
Well, I guess this is as good as time as any to tell you, I can only deal with you guys like once a year. I don't know if I could do more than 2 tops, and that's on a good day. Well, we all know who I'm talking about. Anyway, so
Ryan.
It's Ryan. That's right. Who would like to go next with number 4?
I'll go ahead and go. Number 4 for me. Let me see if I can get my list up here. Make sure I don't say this wrong, because it's very important that I don't get this in the wrong order. I'm going to say The Longest Day, the 1962 movie based upon the book by Cornelius Ryan. The thing I love about it is an accurate retelling, and it's based upon Cornelius Ryan's book of the same name, and all of the large catalog of first-person interviews he did with soldiers after the war. So it represents vivid memories from not that long ago, back in the time, just maybe 15 years before, something like that. So it's an amazing, I guess, time capsule that he has all these interviews that went into this movie. A large number of the scenes were filmed on location, Pegasus Bridge, for instance, and Point du Hoc and other places. Not all of them, but a large number of them had great sweeping cinematic, scenes where they had all these, men running through villages and stuff. And it's just amazing to watch. Actual Spitfires in the movie.
Yes.
you know, and they actually did use some veterans of D-Day. One of the things I found amazing as I was reading a bit about it, they were in talks with Dwight D. Eisenhower for him to play himself in the movie.
Oh, nice.
But they said they couldn't make him look young enough. I'm like, get out of here. I don't care. Put the real guy in there.
Yeah.
They had General James.
Yeah, put him in. Sorry, go
ahead.
They had
General James Gavin as a consultant, but they had somebody play him in the movie. I'm like, okay, if you're going to have older actors, and they did that, they had John Wayne in the movie.
I know.
As Vandervoort, you know, and I'm like, if you're going to have older actors, then put the real guys in there. A lot of those guys were willing to do it, and they said, "Nah, you're a little too old now." I'm like, see, get out of here.
That was the only thing that bothered him about the movie. Everything that you said about it, I agree with, except for, to me, that is the type example of a movie being diminished to some degree by having a bunch of old established actors in there.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do that, if you're going to have a bunch of 30, 40, 50-year-old dudes playing sergeants, then why not bring in Eisenhower if he looks older and just add some gravitas to it?
Yeah.
Right. But that's the one thing about the movie that I don't like is they went too much with star power and not enough with, hey, let's get a bunch of young people in there. Like a captain back then would have been like 25 years old, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
They had like 40-year-old dudes in there doing it.
Yeah.
But Ryan, I can't argue with you about the other elements of it, the cinematography. What year was that movie made?
It came out in 1962.
Yeah, so it was nearer to it than some of the other movies that have been made. But I like that movie. That's the only part I didn't like. I wish they would have just I would have rather cast unknown young actors, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah. Instead of like Henry Fonda and John Wayne and people like that. Yeah.
Yes.
So one more point I wanted to make about it that I think is great is I mentioned that they used some actual veterans that fought in Normandy. They used them in the movies. Like this guy, Richard Todd, he played Major John Howard, who led the assault on Pegasus Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he actually fought alongside Major Howard during the actual Pegasus Bridge and the actual taking of Pegasus Bridge. So it's amazing to see this guy playing Major Howard, but the guy next to Major Howard in the movie is playing him in real life. You know, it's like,
right now. Am I doing a good job?
You know, it's amazing how they did that.
Am I sucking at this or not?
Right. You know, and he actually wore his beret that he wore on D-Day in that movie.
Right.
So I love stuff like that. You know, that's just
cool.
Really cool stuff. So
that's cool. So I'm sorry, Tony.
Well, so then
well, before you go, Tony, so you're going to give your number 4, right? So let me say the words that most people regret. Tony, we would like to hear from you now.
You tell him, Ray.
Oh my gosh, you guys are brutal, but I like it and it's well deserving. I get it. So my number 4 is very similar to Ryan's in many ways. My number 4 is 12 O'Clock High.
Oh, I love that one.
Yep, I didn't see that movie until I was in my 30s. And when I watched it, it was very different from a lot of the black and white war movies from that period, from post-war. So this one was made in 1949, and it features Gregory Peck. And the movie was written by Cy Bartlett and Bernie Lay Jr., both of whom flew combat missions for the 8th Air Force during World War II and were on the general staff. Wow. They understood both sides of it, what it was like to be in the air when you're getting shot at and what it was like dealing with the detritus of the men's mental health when they landed. Yeah. And what I really liked about this movie is it didn't do this God and country treatment to the American 8th Air Force. They showed that Air Force in the early days as being undermanned, under-equipped, under a tremendous amount of stress. Men were breaking. Men were had to be taken out of these outfits to deal with PTS. They used actual combat footage from their time in the war, and the director actually collected some of that combat footage. And so what I liked about 12 O'Clock High is it spoke to the conditions of the actual combat conditions and with post-traumatic stress. And it was so timely. 1949, right? Yeah, it was right after the war. And it was written by the people who suffered all these things that have been so well featured recently in series like Masters of the Air. So that's my number 4.
Nice.
Very good.
can I just say about that film? I remember being a kid, and we're probably talking less than 12. And I don't know how, I stumbled across that movie. I watched it by myself. There was no one for me to ask questions in it, just burned into me. And I was scared to death, but I enjoyed it all at the same time. I'm not sure what that says about me, but yeah, no, just what they had to go through. There was just never enough of anything. And it was just that the human condition was tested like never before. And I just remember, in fact, I was so freaked out, but I liked it. I didn't watch it for another 25 years. And I watched it again just to try to recapture that. But that movie stuck with me for a very long time. And yet I couldn't bring myself to watch it again, but I absolutely love that movie. Good for you, Tony. I know you don't hear that a lot.
Look
Good
at
for
this.
you.
This is the first compliment I've gotten in an hour worth of dialogue here. It's not even dialogue. It's monologue. It's
got to work for it.
You
Tony.
guys attacking me. But at any rate, I mean, no, I agree with that, Ray. I mean, I remember when I got done watching that movie and I was in my 30s, it's not a feel-good movie, audience. If you watch it, you're not going to walk away feeling like, oh, hell yeah, we did some shit. It ends in a very somber tone. This is not a fun movie to watch if you're not feeling well about yourself right now.
Yeah. Don't bring popcorn.
But if you want to get a sense of how difficult it was for these guys and the whipsaw that they faced when they were on the ground versus in the air, I don't think anything outside of Masters of the Air captures it better.
Yeah,
right. I think it was literally that learning process. There's always a learning process. There's always a learning curve. It's just that when it's in war, people die when they make mistakes, or they suffer great, bodily injuries or traumatic injuries. And so, but life goes on. You have to deal with that person the next day. They've got to deal with life, and you still got to deal with the war. That's one of the things that makes war just so horrible.
Totally. And just a quick stat. So the men that are featured in that movie, 12 O'Clock High, those early entrants into the war in 42 and 43 from the 100th Bomb Group, for example, out of only 27% of those initial men who flew over there together to fight made it home. 27%.
Yeah, that's insane.
So, I mean, it's insane. And we talked about Das Boot and the casualty rates with the German submarine force. Well, the second highest per capita casualties that occurred in that theater was the U.S. 8th Air Force.
Yes, just decimated. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm afraid to give you my number 4 because Ryan, I'm afraid of suffering the wrath of Ryan.
Uh-oh.
That's kind of cool. For emotional reasons, I chose the 2017 Dunkirk movie. They filmed on location. They used real Spitfires that were provided by the Imperial War Museum of Duxford. That made me giggle, but in a manly way.
Did you pee a little bit when you giggled? Okay.
But again, in a manly way. I cannot stress that enough.
There's no manly way to pee your pants.
Sorry. Oh, you haven't seen me do it. I'll send you a video. Point is, I can't believe I just said that. Point is, and we were talking about this a couple of minutes ago, there's not war room shots. It's just the men on the beach. It's the men in the boats. They're just doing the best they can. They're dealing with the situation. They don't know the bigger picture.
I'm a fan of Dunkirk. I think it's a very good movie, and I think it's very well done.
Yeah, and just the last thing I'll say is they did not include, unfortunately, this would have made it even better, James Campbell Clouston, who was one of the pier master who helped organize and get so many guys out there to get on the boats to get back home, which is why they were able to save over 300,000. And we talked about this earlier, there were moments of bravery, sacrifice, but also cowardliness. There's no reason to bring up Ryan at this point. No, I'm just joking. No, but that's all true. But that's how life and death situations are. You're going to see good. You're going to see bad. You're going to see some people rise to the occasion. And some people, it's just too much for them. And I thought they captured that really well. But just shooting on the location, and I think they either used some of the smaller ships. I can't remember about that part, but when the father and son went out and they were just one of the many, 1,000 little ships that brought these guys home, that meant a lot to me, and I just enjoyed the experience.
So, I mean, one thing I was going to say, I think the guy that took his yacht over and they end up getting like strafed and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
that was supposed to be Charles Lightoller. I don't know if you knew that.
Hmm.
Charles Lightoller was on the Titanic. He was an officer on the Titanic.
Yes.
And he actually survived the sinking of the Titanic. And in real life, he participated in the evacuation of Dunkirk with his yacht.
That's amazing.
I didn't know that. That's
Operation
freaking
Dynamo.
awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
And
Holy
I was wondering when I watched that movie, I'm like, is this supposed to be Lightoller? Because he kind of looked like him.
Right.
And they kind of hinted at times that he kind of had some experience with stuff. So
right.
that was
they were alluding to it. Yeah. But they didn't want to add another element, so they probably just touched upon it. But yeah, I just enjoy that. That one, there are moments you can eat popcorn, and then there are moments you're going to forget the popcorn's there.
And that constant tone in the background.
Yes.
Just unnerves you the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah.
What got me was, and you probably saw this in the commercials, is when the men are on the beach and the Messerschmitts come down to strafe them, they purposefully don't show the German pilots. There's no reactions. It's just this ominous, almost Jaws-like creature just coming down, a shark, just coming down and just, it's a death machine. And then it goes on to wherever. But I just enjoyed in that because, again, it is a war film. Okay, so I'm sorry, did I?
No, I was just going to say, I think the reason that we all enjoyed it is the authenticity. You talked about the display of cowardice and all that, and no one can know how they're going to behave when they're put in that position. So you can't judge them. You can't know if you're going to be that person or not. And I thought that was really cool that, again, I think more of the modern films are getting away from that jingoistic sort of God and country things and are getting towards the root of the human condition when they fight in battle. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. I thought it was really authentic.
Yeah, it's okay to be human. It's okay not to know exactly how you're going to react in a situation that you've never been in before. That's normal. I'm glad that they're not afraid to say, hey, let's do this, as opposed to, oh, we're Americans, whatever, that kind of thing. So,
totally.
So who would like to go first with number 3?
I think, is it my turn?
Go for
your
it,
turn,
Tony.
Tony?
Yeah,
I'll go for it. This is a movie that I doubt you have ever heard of or any of our listeners have heard of.
Ooh, okay.
And the only reason that I stumbled into it, because it's a foreign film on World War II, is because I enjoy shooting military surplus rifles. And there was a certain type of military surplus rifle that's from this theater that not a lot of people collect or have shot. Right. And in researching these rifles, I started researching about the time period that they were used. The name of the movie is called Talvisota, and that is the Finnish word for the Winter War. And it has to do, and you've talked about this on your podcast, Ray. It has to do with when the Soviet Union, much like today, attacked a neutral country, Finland, because they just wanted to have more territory because they're perpetually paranoid and were afraid that Finland was too close to Leningrad and they wanted to have a buffer zone around there. So they made up a bunch of crazy ass reasons to invade them. And then the Russians proceeded to get their ass handed to them for about 6 months.
Right.
And what I like
parallels
about
to today.
Exactly. And this was written and produced in 1989. It's a Finnish film. You can get it on DVD with American subtitles and all that. I have the DVD. It's fantastic. And to me, what I like about it historically is the Finnish, when the Soviets attacked the Finns and the Finns bloodied the Russians' nose, that served as a catalyst for the invasion into Russia by Germany.
Good
the
point.
World saw it. Hitler saw it. It wasn't the Genesis. The Genesis was just Lebensraum and Adolf Hitler's desire to push east. But the catalyst, the thing that made him go, we can do this.
In a year.
Totally. And yes, and it made him believe that not only could they defeat this large country, but they could do it quickly.
Yes.
Because they had a proper military. You had 180 million people in Russia fighting against 3.6 million Finns. And the Finns killed something like 10 or 15 Russians to every one of their losses. I mean, it was a bloodbath. And when I watched this is well before what's going on in Ukraine today. I never thought that movie would be a parallel to what's happening in 2024.
Right.
And if you watch it's awesome. And if you watch the movie, it's 3 hours long. They talk about the home front. They put context in there. Everyone's dirty. By the end, it's desperate. They show the fear, the cowardice, the heroism. And it really, to me, exemplifies every one of my checkpoints early on on what a good war movie is. I really strongly recommend that if anyone can get the DVD, they can. What I found for the audience is on YouTube, if you type in Tel Visota or the Winter War, there's this YouTube channel. It's kind of like American Mystery Theater 3000. There's this guy, he's Irish, who plays the movie and then will make comments to it.
Right.
So you can watch it for free on YouTube, and I really recommend people do it. It's a fantastic film.
Okay.
If you're willing to put up with the Irish voice.
Exactly.
I'm just joking. I love Ireland.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
And what's cool with this Irish guy, I can't remember the name of his channel, is he's sitting there talking. He's an older dude. He's got a black Puma, like one-piece suit on, and all you see is this big white kind of bald head. It kind of looks a little bit like the scene from Darth Vader when he gets unmasked. Yeah, and all of a sudden you got this guy here with his black uniform. He's like vaping during it and talking while he's vaping. It's pretty chill, but he is a combat veteran, and so he speaks directly to some of the experiences. So if you want to watch it for free there, you can. But The Winter War, 1989. Don't ask me to tell you who the actors are. I can't pronounce Finnish, but I remember watching that years ago, and I was like, holy shit, this is the best war movie no one knows about.
Cool. Ryan, did you want to comment, or because I was just go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask if the Irish dude plays a shillelagh. Does he play any instruments?
Isn't a shillelagh a thing that you beat people with?
I don't know.
I think you're thinking.
No, I think it's well, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought it was an Irish instrument. Maybe I'm wrong.
So did I. Go ahead.
It might be both. It's Irish. It might be an instrument that you beat people with.
You could play it and bludgeon. Bludgeon. Play.
That's right.
Yeah. Well,
no, I don't. Sorry. Go ahead, Ray. I didn't mean to jump in there.
No, I'm sorry. I just between the black Puma suit, maybe he's just part of the retired from the Irish mafia. That's just what I assume.
That could be.
I would like to learn more about the guy on the YouTube channel, because based on his experiences after watching, him comment on this 3-hour-long movie in 2 parts, I mean, he talked about like being under artillery fire in Israel.
I cannot imagine.
So he must have been some like mercenary person or something. I don't know. But at any rate, you can watch it for free there or buy the DVD. But I don't think either of our audiences, because there's so much overlap between the two in terms of the history, I don't think they'd be disappointed at all. It's an amazing movie.
Cool. Sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
All right. So my movie is a pretty heavy one. It's Schindler's List. It's a movie that, obviously is very realistic. It's an accurate retelling of what happened. I don't believe it was filmed. I'm not sure actually where it was filmed, but it's terrifying. It's the kind of movie that I'll admit I've seen it once, because it's so heavy. It's hard for me to want to sit down and devote 3 hours and watch it, because it's so emotionally draining to me, but it's an important movie, and one of the things that, that's amazing about it. Obviously, Oscar Schindler was a man who he's a German guy who owned a factory, and he took in like over 1,000 Polish Jews to work in his factory throughout the war, and basically protected them from being deported to concentration camps. And it's a true story. And what's amazing to me about it, Steven Spielberg directed the movie, won a whole host of awards. It came out in '93, I think. Right. But it's the fact that Spielberg tried to pawn the movie off and see if other directors would want to do it, because he didn't feel like he was mature enough to do it. He's Jewish, and he felt like, so he tried to get Roman Polanski to do it, who grew up in the Warsaw Ghetto. Roman Polanski did. Roman Polanski's parents were in a concentration camp. Polanski said, no, I can't. I'm not going to do it. He tried to get Scorsese to do it. He tried to get, anyway, a bunch of high profile executive directors to do it. So then he finally decided, he's like, I need to man up and do this, because it's basically, a gift that I can give to my children, that we told this story in the right way, and did it justice, and did it the honor that it deserved, and the heaviness that it deserves, Yeah. And so obviously the acting's great. You've got Liam Neeson in it, who plays Oscar Schindler. You've got who's the guy that plays the SS guard? Gosh darn it. Um, anyway, let me look real quick. I've got it right here.
Yeah.
But it's another example. That guard is another example of an amazing actor playing a bad guy in
Ralph
a way where
Fiennes. Yes.
In Inglourious Bastards, right?
Yeah. It's amazing. So, and then the scene at the end where, all of the actual descendants of of Schindler's List, the survivors, they all come up to Oscar Schindler's grave like it's present day, and they're all paying their respects and laying flowers on his grave. That's the most amazing thing I think I've seen in cinematic history, just in terms of the poignancy and to realize the legacy that's been left because of that very brave act that he did during the war. So, so that's a movie that I feel like has to be in my top 5 because it's so important.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. And not only did he save a bunch of Jewish lives, but he saved a bunch of Allied lives, because in the factories, he told his people who were making artillery shells that if any one of these work when they leave this factory, he's going to send them, back to the concentration camps. He said it in a joking way, but that was also part of the movie. And and because of the slave labor that Germany was forced to employ during the war, their failure rate on their munitions was catastrophically high. There was duds everywhere. There's a famous scene of Band of Brothers where an 88 shell lands right next to a foxhole and doesn't go off. Right. That may have been made in that camp.
Right.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. Just the way like a spider web, it just goes out and it affects wider events. Can I just say real quick before I forget? Yeah. I don't know if it was Steven Spielberg's wife, daughter, sister, whatever, but her name is Nancy Spielberg. She did a documentary called Above and Beyond, and it's about when Israel first declared itself a country. Some Jewish and non-Jewish pilots were able to buy World War II planes. Only former pilots from the war could buy planes, and they bought some Messerschmitts and some Spitfires, and they literally flew them over to Israel. And of course, when Israel declares itself a nation, it is immediately attacked, and they have to use those planes. And so they got some of the pilots. And it is an incredible documentary, Above and Beyond. If you want to see something kind of attached to, I guess, what other Spielbergs are doing to tell the story. World War II stops, but the story of World War II goes on in some form or fashion. And it just reminded me of that. So check that out when you get a chance.
No, I didn't know about that movie. And think about the irony where you have the Jewish state being armed by Nazi German weapons.
That's what I chuckled about.
Right? Not just
they were
planes.
Good. They're good planes.
Yeah, but they're Mauser rifles. There's a collector's market for Mauser rifles that were used in Israel. So all these German Mauser rifles, these K98s, had the eagle with holding the swastika. So they would peen all the swastikas off the rifle, put the Star of David on it, and then issue them to their troops. And they were basically, the irony is that the early Jewish state was fortified by Nazi weapons.
Right. In a very, very superficial way. I was telling my kids about Mel Brooks's song "Springtime for Hitler," and they're like, should people be making jokes? I'm like, the Nazis have earned it. People should be making jokes and ridiculing them for the next 1,000 years. Right. So yes. And that, what you were describing, poetic
Absolutely.
justice, if I may. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. So I'll make my number 3 really quick, because one of you gentlemen have already mentioned it, and it's Patton. And again, someone from my generation, George C. Scott playing a son of a bitch. You put those two together, But here's the thing. General Patton is a lot like Churchill. If there's a war, you want them on your side as long as you can control them. It's when they step outside and they piss people off with what they do or what they say. But these guys were born to fight. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. But there are some people who either have a chip on their shoulder or whatever makes up their psychology. They are just born warriors. Maybe not the ones doing the actual fighting, but that's just who they are. And they shine in those moments, and people like that still exist, and it just kind of conveys that for me. So I just enjoy that movie. And again, and then when it starts out, it's just that giant scene in the flag, and he's on that stage.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just love that movie so much.
And I like how you made the parallel between Patton and Winston Churchill. I'm a big fan of Winston Churchill. And you're right. Another thing that they shared is they were pragmatic, right?
Yes.
They didn't always do what was popular. It wasn't touchy-feely. But there was that famous scene where Bradley, they were in Sicily, and Patton was trying to race around to beat Monty to, I forget even what city it was at the point.
Right. Yeah.
And
Messina?
I think maybe it was to Messina. Yeah, that's it. And Bradley was giving Patton crap for pushing his men and the casualties and how tough it was. And there's that famous scene where he looks at Bradley and he's like, I got to tell you, Bradley, how many men of our dying if those sons of bitches were still stuck on the bottom of that hill right now?
Exactly.
The idea being, yeah, it sucks that I got to send men to frontal assaults to get this going and they're dying. But how many die by lack of action, by lack of activity, by lack of initiative? And I thought that was a really interesting thing. That's very Churchillian. He would do the same thing.
And he would just say, that's the price of war. You just if I could be slightly disrespectful, my favorite scene of Patton is when he's asked by the chaplain, "Sir, I've been told that you read the Bible. Is that true?" And Patton looks at him and smirks and goes, "That's right. Every goddamn day."
That's right.
That's Patton. That's Patton in a nutshell.
Well, who doesn't love the warrior priest, right? I mean, he was a pious man. He did believe in God and reincarnation. But how many times we've seen movies like Robin Hood, right? Where you got this friar who's got a stick in his hand. He's clubbing the bad guys down. Sometimes we like to see, the humans take care of themselves. Sometimes you can't pray your way out of it. Sometimes you got to go out there and do that.
You need a stick. You need a stick sometimes.
That's right.
Yeah. Who would like to give their number two?
Number two. I'll go. Mine. Did you? Oh, you already gave yours, right, Ray? Yeah, you said Patton. Sorry, that's what we were just talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. That was my number three.
Number three. Sorry about that. Yeah. Number two.
Yeah.
Number two for me is a movie from 1946. It's not very well known. It's called The Best Years of Our Lives. It follows three different GIs coming back from Europe on Operation Magic Carpet. Right. And they all come from different backgrounds. They are all crammed in the nose of a B-17 flying back to the U.S. And the whole time it shows them like they're traveling back and their faces are pressed up against a window, kind of looking out because they can't wait to get home.
Right.
And each one of them has to deal with their own difficulties in reintegrating back into American society. And it's amazing because it's filmed right after the end of the war. So they're using surplus B-17s. There's even a scene where they're in an actual B-17 scrapyard. I mean, and it's a really interesting post-war story. One guy is really good looking, guy who did great in the Army. And you, Ray, it's just like you. He looked just like you.
But wildly successful, good looking, unstoppable.
Yeah. I mean, but in the Army, he had a sense of purpose. He had, he was rising up through the ranks because, he just had that typical movie star good look, just like you, Ray. Right. And he gets back to the U.S. And you realize you're thinking, oh man, where did he come from? Well, you realize he came from squalor and his parents live in a shack underneath the bridge in New York City. And he married some harlot before he left, who's now a gold digger and works in a bar and is basically just living off of his income while he's been gone. She didn't even know he's back. Jeez. And so he finally divorces her because it's just a train wreck.
Right.
Takes a job in a department store working at a perfume counter. And you see the dichotomy here. Like, he can't find a damn job because of all the GIs coming back.
Yeah.
And did great in the Army. He had a rocket strapped to his butt, probably should have stayed in.
Yeah.
Instead, now he's working behind a perfume counter in a department store. And he ends up getting a job working in a B-17 scrapyard. Okay. So another guy
the irony.
That's in the plane with him has his hands blown off in the war. He's got hooks for hands.
Right.
And this guy really did have hooks for hands. And he comes back. He goes home to his family. They don't know anything about what this is. He has a girlfriend that he was engaged to be married to. But he comes back and she sees these hooks for hands, and there's a conversation about, what are you going to do on your honeymoon night with these hooks, you know? And it's like, it's subjects that you're like, they're tackling this in 1946.
She said that? Yeah.
I mean, it's that sort of thing where you can tell she's the little girl's like looking at him like, oh, I'm not sure about this now, you know?
Yeah.
And he doesn't know if she's going to stay with him. And there's all this, you know, turmoil with whether or not she's going to break up with him, leave him, whatever. And then the other guy is a banker in real life, you know, before the war, executive at a bank, goes overseas, becomes an officer of the military. He comes back. He's got an upscale apartment. He's got a family, beautiful family. Comes back. All he wants to do is take his family out with him and go to the bars all night to celebrate being home. So he drags his family with him to all these bars that are packed with GIs that just got home. And he's just getting ripped every night with his family. And he becomes an alcoholic, and he's having a hard time dealing with PTSD. Right. And so it's a very interesting movie to get a short take of what it was like to reintegrate to society at the end of the war. And it was very timely. It's not like it was done in 1990. It was done right after the war, whenever this was an issue. So I found that to be very interesting.
Yeah, someone must have saw something and went, we got to cover this, or we got to do a movie about this. But see, that's a part of war that no one wants to talk about. Yep. If you're going to be pro-war, if you're going to be patriotic, if you're going to be whatever, pony up at the end, because eventually this is going to end, and this person's going to come back, and whatever is left of them emotionally, psychologically, physically, literally, you better take care of them, because they did something you weren't willing to do. So if you're going to be there for the beginning, you fucking better be there at the end, because they, at the very least, deserve that. Sorry.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, if you're going to support the vets and what they do, it's the whole thing. And that's why, like right now, there's a lot of controversy going on with the barracks and how squalid those conditions are. And it was just 10 or 15 years ago when some of our medical facilities were squalid and whatnot. And, you know, after all the things that these guys do, when they come home, it is not puppies and rainbows. There's a lot of broken marriages. There's a lot of war brides that were shipped over from England, the United States, whose American GI husbands didn't even show up to pick them up. I mean, that's part of war and the human condition as well. So this idea that you go home to Mayberry Street and live happily ever after is probably relatively rare for a lot of these veterans who came home.
Yeah. Can I just say real quick, when Ryan, when you were talking about the first gentleman, that reminded me, and I know this is, as far as I know, it's fiction, but that scene in Rambo 1, because there's been like 15, where he goes, when I was in charge of $1 million equipment, and now he can't even hold a job. People take one look at him, but in war, he's an asset. In civilian life, he is suspicious, and that's so unfair. But that's the world we live in.
Well, and you saw that being reported during the Gulf Wars, where men were getting IEDs, and occasionally one of them would come home and do something bad, and they were being painted by a broad brush in the media. It's like, oh, we're going to have this wave of psychopath killers that we trained to smoke everybody, you know, because of the war and all that. And it never bore out. It didn't really happen. But you get the both. You get on one hand, veterans either having a lack of care or concern over some of their issues, or they're seen as kind of semi-demonic individuals who will never adjust to society. And I think truth is somewhere in the middle of those two.
Yeah. True.
Or we're doing our number 2, I believe, right now, right? Okay, so mine, because I think both of you gentlemen have gone.
I haven't got to mine yet, but I'll do it very quickly.
No, please. I apologize.
No worries. First off, Patton is the first one out of all of these that we actually had a shared one with, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Good.
My number 2 is Letters from Iwo Jima. And the reason I like Letters from Iwo Jima, and I mentioned this early on when I look for things in certain war films, I like to see both sides of the story. It was, for those who may not know, it was filmed in 2006. Clint Eastwood directed 2 films at the same time. Bill Bradley's Flags of Our Fathers. And at the same time, he also made the movie Letters for Iwo Jima. So when he was done on location, he had material for both films, and both were released in 2006. And I like Letters from Iwo Jima better than Flags of Our Father.
Me too.
Because you get the sense of foreboding of what it was like for the Japanese to be on this shitty little island and this huge, by this time in the war, American juggernaut that was clicking on all cylinders, and what they thought of the American GIs and what the American GIs were thinking of the Japanese and how they treated each other, the realism. It was actually filmed on location.
Yeah.
You got special permission to go to Iwo Jima, which you
That's
almost
amazing.
never do.
Right.
Is unfreaking believable. So to me, being able to say, gosh, what was going on? I've seen plenty of footage of the Americans attacking a beach and bombing the shit out of everything. What was it like for the people on the island? And this movie addressed that. And they used diaries and letters from Japanese soldiers to recreate the sort of conversations they'd had. I thought it was, quite frankly, one of Clint Eastwood's best films ever.
Yeah. I even now don't have the energy that he had at that age. So good for him. But can I just say, not only do I agree with you, but when the Americans are coming ashore, and we've already seen what the Japanese, some of what the Japanese have done, prepare. I'm sitting there waving at the TV screen. No, go back, because I am so into it. I'm like, this is going to be a bloodbath, and you're just like, but that's what you do. You know, if you know the way the enemy is coming, you prepare. That's what you do.
Yeah, and the casualties on Iwo Jima. I think Iwo was the only island campaign where the United States, our invading forces, incurred more casualties than the defending forces.
Yes, which is a sign of good leadership on their part. Sorry.
Yes, no, it was.
I will say Letters from Iwo Jima is actually my number one pick. So I'll just go ahead and pile on now while we're discussing it.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. And what I like about it is obviously it's an authentic cast. They cast all Japanese guys to be in it. It's all in subtitles. It's all Japanese, and it humanizes the enemy. I mean,
thank you.
That's one of the things that I like about it is, you realize that some of these rank and file guys, they didn't want to be there. They hated being there. They didn't like the idea of dying for their country
and underground for time, stretches of time. Yes, that's insane.
And I mean, the opening scene where you see Suribachi in the background and they're digging in that black sand and everything, and they're saying, "Curse this damn island," and that Japanese commander walks up and says, "What'd you say?" And he's like, "Oh, nothing, sir." And
all good here.
That movie, Tony and I, we've talked about this many times, about it being one of the top movies. It's just the authenticness of it, and the story is that they're excavating Kuribayashi's cave in the 1990s. And they find buried in the floor this satchel full of letters that never made it out because they weren't being resupplied anymore, so they couldn't send letters home. So they had these letters from these soldiers, and they're reading the letters, and they're like, these guys didn't want to be here, and so it's a pretty interesting movie, and it's one of my all-time favorites. It's in my DVD library right now.
Right. Those scenes in that movie remind me of the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. It's just like so intense, but that's the way it was.
Yes.
So before I give my number two, on a much lighter note, because after Ryan, he got all deep on us. Since he's given us his number one already, I guess you were right, Tony. He is a bit premature. So let's don't even. You can't help it. You can't.
What the heck is up with that?
He has a big head and he's premature.
Wow, that's 2 for 2. Anyway, so I don't want to touch that one. So my number two is a completely emotional choice, and I don't care because I love it. The Battle of Britain. It was an emotional decision, and whenever I'm flipping through the channels, which I rarely do, but if that movie comes on, I don't care if there's only 5 minutes left. I'm like, leave me alone. Everybody go away. Give me some popcorn. I know
that's right. This is happening.
But you can work the microwave. Yeah. So, and I'll just sit and watch it. But I've read several books on the Battle of Britain when I covered it, and the movie covers it well, and it covers it accurately. During the initial air clashes, the Luftwaffe is going after the RAF landing fields and the radar towers, and the RAF is just like, this is not good. We're getting our ass handed to us. Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Downing is like truly worried, but then and I'm sure you've seen this before. A German squadron of bombers at night messes up. They accidentally bomb London proper at night, and now it's on like Donkey Kong. London bombs them back. The point is, as much as the civilians are now suffering, the RAF is spared. They get to repair their fields. They have time, and we've talked about this, they have time to train more troops, build more planes. And so even though it was horrendous for the British people, the RAF is going to be able to bounce back. And of course, they're going to, as long as they don't lose, they win. So, and again, it was just brilliantly done. I love everything about it. I can watch it, and I have a billion times. But my favorite part is when the Polish squadron, who's not allowed to fight because of language barriers, they're training or whatever, training with a British officer, and they see a German squadron coming. You know, this wasn't planned, and the Polish purposefully pretend I don't understand, and they each one by one go, "Repeat, please," and they go off the screen. "Repeat, please," go off the screen, whatever. And then the guy goes, "Oh, bloody hell," or "Oh, God's truth," or "God's blood." Yeah, and he just goes after them. And of course, they take out a couple of German planes. But that's when Hugh Downing and Park, who's in charge of section, I think it's 11, the most important part, it's like, yeah, activate them. Yeah, they can't speak English, but activate them, activate the Czech pilots, activate the Canadians, because they needed pilots. Language, we'll figure that shit out later. We need as many fighters in the air as we can. And it just gets me every single time. So that's my love story to World War II. I don't know what the fuck that means, but I just love that. I just love that movie a lot.
A little side story about the Battle of Britain movie.
Please.
The chief pilot for that movie was a man named Connie Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He had a sprawling ranch in the Texas Panhandle.
Oh.
And actually, no, sorry, down in the Permian Basin outside of Midland. Okay. And when I worked for a company, we had a large number of oil assets down in that area. And I went down there on location as we were, going to be collecting data and drilling a well. And it was right outside of Connie Edwards's ranch. And every day he was suspicious of the oil companies. He'd drive his truck down and he'd sit on top of the hill about a mile away and watch us. Okay. Make sure we weren't doing anything. But what was so cool about Connie Edwards is that he had his own airstrip there at his ranch. And he had several Spitfires and ME-109s from the movie, The Battle of Britain, in his hangar.
In Midland, Texas.
Texas. And
you never think.
He flew a large number of he was in almost all of the Spitfire scenes in the movie, The Battle of Britain. He was one of the pilots.
That's cool.
They didn't have his face, but he was one of the pilots. They couldn't pay him enough in the movie. So he said, well, why don't you just give me 2 Spitfires and a couple ME-109s? And they're like, okay. So they gave him all this stuff. He also had a bunch of engines and everything like that. He had all this in his hangar there in Midland, Texas. Tony, you know about this?
No, it's the first time I heard about it. This is an amazing story. I had no idea.
Yeah, it is so cool. You just go out there and type in Battle of Britain film, and you'll see you'll see Connie Edwards mentioned in there. And he was a real firecracker guy and stuff, as far as like a curmudgeon,
Yeah.
And he didn't need the money. People kept wanting to buy his planes off of him. He's like, they're going to pay for it if they want them, And then he passed away in 2019. Well, those planes, he sold them off right before he passed away.
Right.
And they're all being restored and they're going to live on, And so it's amazing, stuff. But these guys have stuff squirreled away. I mean, from the war, this is amazing stuff, Well,
in this case, like airplanes in this case, but I agree, Ray, the thing I liked about the movie Battle of Britain was they showed the multinational force that was needed at that time when Britain was still on its heels and stretched thin. They had this huge Navy and the Merchant Marine, especially with the Poles. I mean, the Poles played an outsized role. Not just in the Battle of Britain, but in a number of areas, ground forces, for example, in Italy,
North Africa as well.
North Africa, exactly. And it's interesting to see the difference between like a colonial power and how they fight a war from a representative republic and how we fight a war. We didn't have those connections. We weren't in Europe, but it was really interesting to see that. And to have those men recognized for it. I thought it was a great movie too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, as far as the gentleman in Texas, I'm probably a little less impressed than you are because I have a helipad out here in my front. I don't have a helicopter, but I have a helipad. So I'm building.
It's called a patio.
Right?
If you got
sure. If you want to, I'm doing my Larry David. Sure, if you want to
labels,
call it a patio.
it's just labels, right?
No, see, Ryan, because you told that story, I'm actually glad I invited you today. So you boom. We're still waiting for Tony to redeem himself, but you, sir.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
My presence here is just a big waste of time. But hey, at least half of us like contributed in some meaningful way to this particular episode. Thank you, Ryan.
No, so Ryan, the hero, has given us his number one, and Ryan, certainly feel free to add on to anything that you want, but. If you don't, then Tony, why don't you? Not that anybody cares. If you want to give us your number one selection.
My number one is one that's probably not surprising most people. It's an emotional pick. It's Saving Private Ryan, and it's not because it's historically correct or anything like that.
Right.
It's because of the cinematography. It's because that was the first war movie that really evoked emotions from people who went and watched it, where people felt like. Either if you were there, you felt like, holy crap, they captured what I experienced. And if you weren't, you had the ability for the first time in human history to have this sensory experience that would bring you as close to the ungodful, fearful conditions that these men faced in combat that you ever would. The way that the guns fired, the way that the bullets sounded and went through the air, the way that the men got wounded in horrific, terrible ways. It eliminated the John Wayne death scene forever, where some guy got shot in a soldier or in the shoulder or the heart and said some last words and fell down ceremoniously. No, people, when they got hit, they fell forward on their face and they were dead. Pieces of their body blew off. Men were turned into red mist. The uniforms were dirty. To me, I think the reason it's number one is because it brought the sensory experience of warfare to people who weren't there in a way that's never been done before.
Yeah. The first thing first of all, and I hate this. I agree with Tony. Oh my God, those words. Mine is Saving Private. It was a visceral experience. It literally, you felt like you were there, and you thank God that you weren't there by the time it was all over with. But they just captured that so well. And again, by the time it's all over with, you're like, I hope there's never another war again. But again, and I don't want to step on your toes, Tony. Feel free to jump back in. But like the opening scene took 4 weeks to shoot alone. It was $12 million with 1,500 volunteers. And you were touching on this a minute ago. Some of the D-Day veterans said, I couldn't watch it. It was too triggering. It was too accurate. It was too close to what I went through. And I'm like, I can't do that. And I barely got through it. And the hardest thing I've ever had is a hangnail. So, I mean, that's amazing. But for me also as well, Tom Hanks, if I could have the man's baby, I would. But his ability to do that everyday man persona, he's just a guy. But when the time comes, he rises to the occasion. He's given his order, his mission. He doesn't want to do it. But I think, was it Ryan? I'm not sure who was saying this, but elements of this were real. There was a policy, obviously, in the military. Let's not have a family lose all of their sons. Let's just try to say they tried to do that. There were people that they had to go search for, pluck out, and put them in the rear areas, if you will, so they wouldn't die. That kind of stuff. But and I'll just say this, and then I'll let Tony talk. I think it's near the end. When Mellish, when that German is standing over him and he puts the knife, I swear to God, I can't. I watched that one time.
I can't watch it.
I can't. Every time I get to that scene, I have to fast forward. It is too something. I can never watch
and
it.
you know that stuff occurred every day over there. I mean, those little battles like that you'll never hear about.
Exactly. And
no, I'm the same way. I bet you I've watched Saving Private Ryan in its entirety maybe 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
I have a hard time watching. There's a number of times where it'll be on TV. I'm just like, I can't do it. I'm not in the right headspace.
It's an emotional investment. Yeah.
Exactly. You have to be. You're either ready or you're not. And if you're not ready, next time.
So we had a veteran, Bill Parker, that we featured on our show that landed in the first wave at Omaha Beach. And he said he saw Saving Private Ryan. He said it was the most realistic thing he had seen since The Real Thing. And he actually had told a reporter that, and it got back to Steven Spielberg. And Steven Spielberg sent a message back to Bill and thanked him for his perspective on it, since he was actually there, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's realistic in every way. And I had labored about whether I should put it on the list or not. But you know, the opening scene in and of itself is enough to get it on the list, you know. And then of course how the movie ends, you know, is another very poignant way to tell a story. But you know, it leaves the viewer with messages on really the folly of war. You know, a group of guys going out and getting killed to find one guy.
So he doesn't die.
Yeah, right. So he doesn't die. And the bickering that happens because of that. And the one guy who's trying to be a pacifist, you know, turns the German soldier loose, who ends up coming back and killing that guy, as well as, you know, and then he commits a war crime in the end by executing him. You know, and it's like,
it doesn't make war doesn't have to make war will never make sense when you're in the thick of it. The rules right out the window. Sorry.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I labored about that movie too, but I have a hard time watching it also. And probably should have been. You know, why didn't you do a top 10, Ray? That would have been a lot.
Because this would be 4 hours long. That's why I'm looking at the time, going, I've lost my Friday. What? No. But can I just say, and I'm sure you guys agree with me, but feel free to chip in. So the opening scene, intense. We all get that. And I'm going to try to do this, and I'm going to try to remain composed. Yeah. The ending scene, when the guy goes, was my life worth that? Did I live up to, you know, whatever? Was it a life worth saving? Because, you know, some people literally go through life and they're clueless and their heads in the sand, whatever. And some people really do try to get better as they go on. They try to learn from their mistakes, but to literally have someone, or I guess for yourself to go, X amount of people died to save me. I better freaking get it right. And that's just that idea, that concept, that how your value.
Could you imagine being saddled with that the rest of your life? I mean, never feeling like you're worth it.
Some people would either freeze, try, or rise to the occasion. And I honestly couldn't tell you what I would do because I'm not in that situation. So, but
totally. It was like the perfect ending for a film like that.
Good point.
I don't think anyone didn't cry. I watched it in a single room theater in a place called Socorro, New Mexico, which is a small town in the middle of New Mexico. I was going to grad school there, and it was the only thing that was showing, and the whole town showed up. It was a really kind of community experience. It was very different than going to a big megaplex.
Right.
And I'll never, my wife, Amanda, she's like, I'm not even going. She knew. She goes, I don't ever want to watch that film. I am not built to consume that kind of content. I went there by myself, and when the movie was over, people were numb. People stumbled out of that theater. No one was talking. They were numb. They couldn't even, it was ineffable. They couldn't even, a lot of times you got a movie, it's like, oh man, what was your favorite part and all that? That did not happen. They just walked out to their car and went home.
Numbed, overwhelmed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you imagine the people who are actually there doing that, and they got to come back here and give a shit about whether or not their plates are expired. Like that's all of a sudden an important thing in their life, right?
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
I'll just drum roll. No, I mean, so we got one more number one. The host of the show, you've heard ours, Ray Harris. What is your number one freaking World War II movie of all time?
I thought I'd made this clear. Saving Private Ryan. That just burned. I don't know if I ever have to watch it again because every moment, and it was a pretty long film, burned, seared into my eyeballs, my eye sockets, my heart, my brain, my chest, my everything. I just, no. And maybe it should be that a lot of people, if they had to make this list, that their movie would either be Saving Private Ryan or it'd be close because it's so visceral. You want people to go, whatever we need to do to avoid a war, that's what we're going to do. Sadly, we're not there yet. Yep. Mm-hmm. Don't ask me. I certainly don't have any answers, but people should be walking away going, why? Let's never do this again. Yep. And this movie does that.
Yep. I felt the same way. I remember talking to my wife, Amanda, when I came home. And I said, I kind of heroified some of these generals like Patton we talked about. That's a movie that I liked. And after watching, that movie, I was like, my God, we need to do everything we can to not put people in that position ever, unless we absolutely have to. And if we do, we better support the shit out of them.
Exactly. And one of you said this earlier. It's a bunch of kids. They don't know anything about anything. They average 17, 18, 19.
Yep.
If you were 23, there's a good chance they called you the old man in the group or whatever. And some of them had incredible levels of responsibility. When I was 19, I couldn't even tie my shoe. I mean, these people are in charge. Oh, there's just no way. And we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't rob people of their youth, of their innocence. And that's exactly what war does.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's important for us as voices for the veteran community through our podcasts. We both do it in slightly different ways, that, that we make sure that we articulate that we're not sharing these stories, these histories, these experiences because we're glorifying war. We're trying to let people know that it was pretty shitty, and this is what it looks like when it can happen. And oh, by the way, we're all human beings. How would you have responded to this? And what sort of things about being human that causes us to have blind spots gets us into these damn things? And how do we prevent it from happening?
Exactly.
Yeah. With Saving Private Ryan, I mean, there's so many different perspectives in the movie. Which character do you identify with? Are you Upham? Are you Tom Hanks? Are you Private Ryan? Are you who's the guy with the Ed Burns? I love his character in the movie.
Yes,
he's the one that survives. Besides Private Ryan, he actually survives. In the end. But I love Tom Sizemore's character. Fantastic. But each one of these guys are unique. The guy who's the sniper, the guy who's the medic. Fantastic acting in that movie.
Just across the board. Again, whoever did the casting deserves their own award for that kind of stuff. I'm one of the older guys who's still on the ship going, God, I hope that works out for them.
Yeah.
Not a hero. I know that comes as a shock to a lot of people. Not a hero, not a warrior. Weekend warriors, Italian food warrior, but that's as far as I go.
So in the end, we have 2 votes, 2 top 5s for Letters of Iwo Jima, 2 for Saving Private Ryan. Did we have any other agreements?
Patton.
Yeah, so Patton, 2. So those are those are, and I didn't pick any of those. Like actually, I picked Letters of Iwo Jima.
So basically, this was a show done by old guys. I think. It depends on when you're born. Yeah.
I mean,
but let me give you an example of what I think some of the feedback is going to be. It's going to be something like this. No, you should have picked this, and you should have picked this. Speaking of which, does people want to? Do you gentlemen want to give us a few of your honorable mentions? Because I'm sure there are tons of them.
I've got a couple of honorable mentions that I'd love to throw out there.
Please
do it. One movie is called Conspiracy. It was, we were told by the author Colin Heaton, and it's actually a made-for-television movie. Okay, but it's all about the 1942 Wannsee Conference that took place over in Germany, where the final solution was actually enacted. What's amazing about the movie, it all takes place in one room in the actual building where it actually happened. It's in the actual meeting room. They filmed this. Reinhard Heydrich is played. None of the high command are there, but their adjutants are there. Nobody was going to be in that room when this was being discussed. In the end, there was a transcript in real life that was made of the meeting, and they were all told to destroy it under penalty of death. Well, one copy survived.
That's all it takes.
And that's the screenplay for the movie.
And this is called Conspiracy.
And it's called Conspiracy. And it is amazing to watch this and realize this is what these guys were talking about. And to see how Reinhard Heydrich just steamrolled people. I mean, who was the guy that was the first guy that was captured by the Israeli commandos in 1961 that they brought back and tried him for war crimes.
Yes.
Gosh darn, I can't remember his name. He was in the movie. He's there.
Right.
he's the adjutant for Reinhard Heydrich, you know.
Jesus.
And anyway, there you've got Goering's guy there. You've got, you know, all these different people. You got the mayors of a lot of, or the heads of all these different, basically quadrants of German rule that are underneath the Nazi empire, and like the governors of each one of these different quadrants, and they're all being told, you got to start doing this. And they start talking about the logistics and how they're going to do this. Some of the guys are like, it dawns on them. Hey, you're telling me to do what now? And they're like, you know, and they don't ever come out and really say it, but it's implied what's going to happen. And these guys, some guys are really pushing back. Other guys realize, oh crap, if I push back, they're going to take me outside and pop me right now.
Exactly.
And so imagine being faced with that decision where you're like, what do I do? What do I do?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you take your pop in the head, but.
Anyway. Well, in one part of the movie I thought was interesting is the representative for Adolf Hitler was there. And basically he makes a comment. And again, this is from a transcript. This was transcribed from the actual meeting. This isn't made up crap. Basically what he said was, hey, he's here. He's a representative of Adolf Hitler. Because a lot of people were trying to say that Adolf Hitler didn't know about the final solution. And this transcript shows that the representative for Adolf Hitler basically said, I already know what we're going to agree upon here. And Adolf Hitler's already signed off on it.
Yes.
It's really kind of a smoking gun for, you know, hey, he knew. And that's just, so.
Even if he didn't, I seriously doubt after reading Mein Kampf he'd had any qualms. So that's just like you said, it's the smoking gun. Yeah, that kind of thing.
I got to
see that.
You know, Hitler. There's just a lot of Hitler apologists out there, and this just blows a hole in that shit.
As it should. Good. Good.
Totally.
All right. Other honorable mentions.
I have one really quick. The Darkest Hour. Gary Oldman, Oscar winner. Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
Great movie. I've already said several times how much I like Winston Churchill. He's not perfect, but he's a statesman. He's pragmatic. Ray, I started listening to your podcast years ago when a friend of mine, Led Gardner, he knew I was a big fan of Winston Churchill, said, hey, you know, you need to check this out. And I don't know if you'll be able to see this on camera or not, but this is I bought this from your website when I was watching or listening to your podcast.
Nice.
That in a mug, something about Winston not being a morning person either. So not only do that's the one. Yes, I've got that mug and I've got this. Oh my gosh, I've had this mouse pad for years. And so just a plug for your podcast. What you do when you cover Winston Churchill, I think is without peer. You go through excruciating detail for many episodes. And I really liked what
it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to cover his life because what a life. Sorry.
So the bottom line is it's the Darkest Hour. And I also like how they brought people to that period of time when the real war started, when most Americans think it started on December 7th. In reality, it started back when that movie was talking about what led up to it. So that's my honorable mention.
Exactly. And just to let people know on a related note, this is not only the last mug I have for now, but my lips have been on it. Does that make it more worthy, more valuable? That's
what'll
for you
happen,
to decide. Well,
people will buy it and they'll take the DNA and they'll start cloning your ass. You got to be a little careful there.
That's a good point. My wife can barely take the one of me. So I might have to rethink that. Okay, now this is strange for me because my honorable mentions is a list. These are the movies that were first on the whole list, and then I had to get it down to 5. I'll just do this real quick because these have touched my life so much. Tora, 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 Life is Beautiful, Catch-22, Casablanca, Empire of the Sun, Schindler's List, Dam Busters, Longest Day, Thin Red Line, The Bridge on the River Kwai, The Dirty Dozen.
Great movie.
Captain Corelli's Mandolin. I don't care what people say. I enjoyed that movie. Memphis Belle, Wind Talkers, Flags of Our Fathers, Midway the 2019. Despite the CGI, I don't know. I like that. So one of you mentioned this earlier. Fury with Brad Pitt. I don't think that was a real story, but the action sequence and the detail nailed it.
The tank battles, man.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Sink the Bismarck. A Bridge Too Far. Tom Hanks' Greyhound, Darkest Hour. And then this is what my family reminded me this morning. Jojo Rabbit, which I loved. I totally forgot about that. Well, I know it's kind of not what we discussed, but you know what I'm saying. And Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Just
I have not seen that one. I've seen it out there on Amazon Prime and everything, but I have not seen that one.
Yeah, Jojo Rabbit. I mean, we all have, not all of us, and maybe Tony still does, imaginary friends, but when your imaginary friend is Adolf Hitler, you might want to get some help. You might want to look into some professional advice.
I've never seen or heard Jojo Rabbit. I had no idea that was part of the storyline. You've kind of piqued my interest now.
Yeah, no, you will. You'll enjoy it, and then you won't. And I'm going to leave it there. No,
so
gentlemen, yeah, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I was going to jump in before we sign off. One more honorable mention I would want to put on the list is Anthropoid.
I haven't seen that.
The assassination of Reinhard Heydrich. And the thing that sucks about it is they weave in the love story in the middle of it, and it's completely unnecessary. But it follows the actual events very well. Everything is, the way things happen in that movie is legit.
Right.
And it's amazing movie. So
I'll check that out. After first I got to do the finished one, then I got to do a conspiracy. Somebody write this down. Cheryl, write this down. Yeah. Oh my God. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this so I know which movies to watch now. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It'd be really cool on a YouTube channel if maybe you could take that list and put it in the description, and then people could tap into it, because quite frankly, I thought I had seen pretty much every World War II movie ever. And in the course of this really cool discussion, this is fun, and this was a great idea, Ray, and I appreciate you inviting us. Right. You are brilliant and handsome, apparently, and going to be cloned and take over the world when they get your DNA off your coffee mug. But the bottom line is, no, there's 2 or 3.
Leave him alone. Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
There's 2 or 3 movies that we kicked around that I'd never heard of before.
Yeah,
you know, that I'm going to start Netflixing the shit out of when we get done. So I thought this would be cool. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I enjoy what I do. I've been wanting to do it since I was 12, but what I do is nothing compared to what you talk to the real heroes. I just read about them. So I hope your podcast goes for a very long time. Ryan, good luck with that.
Thank you. It's a Herculean effort, really.
Oh, no, today was. So I preach, brother, preach. But no, but maybe we can come up with another list. I honestly had no idea that a top 5 list would take this long. So
yeah,
if you're driving down the road listening to this and you fell asleep, we're sorry, but hopefully you did, because there's wake up. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in here. So no, seriously, guys, thank you very much for your time. I know you're all busy doing your stuff. I don't know what Tony does, but I can't wait this November for you to come back on the show.
Great. Well, thank you.
We'll have some fresh clips for you that over the course of the year that we think your audience will really enjoy. Sure. And we're looking forward to that too. And thanks again for the opportunity to do this, Ray. It's all the scars I got on my back, all the bullets that I got, all that I absorbed are mostly well-deserved. And hey, that's just the price of admission when we hang out with Ray Harris.
As long as you know it's deserved.